again, live images, as we are seeing on the screen, live images, these large demonstrations taking place right now in Havana, the capital of Cuba, at the Anti-Imperialist Forum. There we're seeing there as Cuba is expressing the highest authorities of the Cuban government, and the Cuban people are gathered there en masse since very quickly, as soon as the news was heard, and a call was made for the people to come out and join forces in solidarity with the Venezuelan people to come out and stand here in this anti-imperialist forum, to be here and to express their solidarity, their will to support and to cooperate with the Venezuelan people, to be ready to stand by the Venezuelan people and to protect the decisions, the will of the Venezuelan people that was exercised at the polls when they elected constitutionally President Nicolas Maduro as the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, to carry out that model, that development project that began with Commander Hugo Chavez with that constitution in 1999. We continue to see right now the large images of Cuba, as people, as we must recall as well, the long-standing relationship that exists between the people, the brotherly relationship that exists between Cuba and Venezuela in all the different processes that first embraced between commanders Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez, setting a new age of cooperation, of true relationship, of friendship and cooperation between peoples in the world. And Cubans were not going to be left behind. They came out very quickly, as we are seeing here in the images. We are seeing hundreds, thousands of people gathered here at the iconic Anti-Imperialist Forum here at the Cuban Malecon. For those that have not traveled, have not visited Havana, this is located right in front of the United States Embassy. The Anti-Imperialist Forum is located right in front of the U.S. Embassy, right next to the iconic Malecon of La Habana. And we are seeing that the people, as soon as the call was made, calling on the people of Cuba to come out to support, to express their solidarity with the brotherly Venezuelan people, they are here present en masse. Alongside the highest authorities, we saw that President Miguel Díaz-Canel was there at the forefront of the gathering, alongside other high-level authorities of the Cuban government. As we are seeing there, the Prime Minister is also here at this gathering, with hundreds, thousands of people have gathered to express their solidarity with the Venezuelan people in the face of the latest criminal blatant aggression of the United States against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. So we can expect this march to begin anytime. This gathering, we probably will have some statements coming from different authorities here gathered at this place. The ceremony is also, because we must remember what unites both Venezuela and Cuba, aside from a long track record of solidarity and companionship, is also a long history of cultural richness, of solidarity, and this is also part of our culture, of the identity of both the Venezuelan people and the Cuban people. And this important celebration of solidarity of the Cuban people with the Venezuelan people is beginning, of course, with a cultural expression. Let's listen to a bit to what is happening.
For this freedom that is the terror of those who always violated in the name of misery, for this freedom that is the night of the oppressors and the definite soul of the entire people, already invincible, for this freedom that shines the pupils, the barefoot, the eyes of the children that walk on the dust, for this freedom that is the empire of the youth, for this freedom that is beautiful as is life. There will be everything to be given if it were necessary, even the shade, and it will never be enough. Today, the America has woken up indignated against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. It has been exercised a very grave military aggression. Let's call things by its name. It is a fascist act of terrorism of state. Its true purpose is to take the natural resources of that sister nation. Venezuela has resisted and defeated empires from the year 1811, and it exists a clear historical continuity between liberators from Bolivar to Chavez and from Chavez to Maduro. The Bolivarian Revolution, with its heroic people, has all the right to self-determination, to build their destiny in a sovereign way, and to defend from these absurd and criminal aggressions. The people of Cuba reaffirms today the same position defined by our apostle Jose Marti in 1881. Give me, Venezuelan, what to serve you. She has in me a son. We do, and we make ours the word of the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Party, President of the Republic, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez. Cuba denounces and demands urgently the reaction of the international community against the criminal attack of the U.S. to Venezuela. Our zone of peace is brutally assaulted. Terrorism of state against the brave people of Venezuela and against our Americas. Presided this act is the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuban, President of the Republic, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez. And with us, the ambassador of the sister Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in Cuba, Orlando Maneiro Gaspar. Members of the Political Bureau and the Secretary of the Central Committee and the political organizations of masses and social. In this Anti-Imperialist Tribune, a representation of the people of Havana in representation of all Cuban men and women. At the start of this act, the actress Talia Pedro interpreted the poem For This Freedom of Fayad Hamis, and next, the words of the hero of the Republic of Cuba and president of the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples, Fernando González. Companion First Secretary of the Central Committee of the Cuban Communist Party, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, and other members of the presidency, Companion Orlando Maneiro, Extraordinary Ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in Cuba. Dear sisters and brothers, Cubans and foreigners that accompany us, in the early hours of today, we knew of the coward and vile attack done by the government of the U.S. against the sister republic of Venezuela. This aggression, this military aggression, is not an isolated fact. It is an escalation in the long economical war, media war, and diplomatic war, and more recently of military threats, with the objective to submit a sovereign people and destroy through force a project of independence and social justice as the Bolivarian Revolution. The character of this military aggression that is ongoing transcends the Venezuelan borders. It constitutes a direct attack to the pillars of living and international law, an assault to the aspiration of building a zone of peace and to the self-determination of our peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean. This action reflects the law with which the administration of Trump operates. The bombings on Caracas and other Venezuelan states prove who are those who take terror, and the extrajudicial killings, the kidnappings, and the piracy in the Caribbean prove who operate as international mafias that are organized. The systematic violation to human rights with which they treat the migrants prove the fascist nature of the government that occupies the White House. The armed aggression against Venezuela is an explicit expression of the application of the Trump corollary of the Monroe Doctrine on our peoples that protect to take power of the natural resources of Venezuela and of the region. facing these atrocities, our solidarity with the heroic and brave people of Venezuela, and that is unbreakable. For it, facing this tribune, we denounce the intervention, the imperialist and fascist intervention of the government of the US against the sister Republic of Venezuela. Our Americas is not the backyard of anyone. We back firmly the declaration of the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, demanding the government of the US a proof of life of President Nicolas Maduro and of his wife, the companion Celia Flores. We convoke urgently to the mobilization of the world for peace and unity facing the imperial threats against our people. We call to all the organizations of solidarity, social movements and defenders of peace and worthy people to pronounce themselves and denounce the military aggression ongoing and to exercise all the possible pressure to stop the impunity with which the government of the US acts. Venezuela today is the cause of humanity. Supporting our brothers and sisters in Venezuela is to defend our right to peace. Long live the homeland of Bolivar and long live the Bolivarian and Chavez Venezuela down imperialism. Long live the solidarity between the peoples. Homeland or death, we will prevail.
Despedida del amigo, queda un adiós detenido, palabras que se congelan, ganas de haberlas dicho, lágrimas que no se lloran para no aceptar que se ha ido. Amanecer extendido. Para la partida del amigo que nos devolvió la risa, no hay adiós definitivo, ni finales de ceniza. Tanto corazón dolido, no se va a creer la prisa de la muerte que ha intentado manchar su roja camisa. Toda la ternura de este amigo desparramada en la brisa de un pueblo que habían dormido, de una América hecha trizas. Nadie piense que se ha ido un momentico a la misa. Ese rastro que dejó el amigo, ese espíritu de vida contra la sierpe que sueña, América dividida, el que levantó al mendigo y compartió su comida. Su manera de estar vivo nunca va a tener medida, no. Abajo el imperialismo, cojones. Todos los amigos del amigo tienen el alma bordada con las frases que nos dijo, con campechana sonrisa. Nadie piense que se ha ido, fue un momentico a la misa. Iba a volver con Sandino, con el Che, Martí Bolívar. Ese rastro que dejó el amigo, ese antídoto de vida contra la sierpe que sueña, más bordada, con las frases que nos dijo, con campechana sonrisa, nadie piense que se ha ido. Fue un momentico a la misa. ¡Viva Chávez!
Long live Chavez and long live Venezuela. Long live Chavez. Dear Cuba, companions all, I believe that before starting we must say once again, down imperialism. Once again it was true and became a reality, the nightmare of the poet that dreamt with plains that covered a day when the people were singing the most and laughing, and it's that imperialism has never and will never leave aside its essence, that is to take, which is to lie, which is to murder. Because that is what imperialism is. That will never be a thing beyond that continue being imperialism and continue being fascist, of repudiating and facing with the lights of our foreheads that comes from the star of Bolivar, of Martí, and of Fidel, and with the steel arm of Maceo, is the only way to defend the life of Cuba and the life of the planet. The Cuban scientists that we work for life, that dedicate our days to save, to produce medicines, to save lives. We cannot stop feeling anything else but repudiation and horror facing these imperialists that produce death and pain. We denounce the act of terrorism of state that was turned into a criminal attack to Venezuela, and that is an attack to our entire Latin America. We denounce the kidnap of the President Maduro, democratically elected, and of the companion Cilia Flores. They do not have the moral or legal authority to such an action. The aggression was today with Venezuela, can be tomorrow with Cuba, with Nicaragua, or Mexico, or any country that has any wealth, the same natural or the biggest wealth, which is independence. The fascist imperialism does not respect international law. It does not respect or recognizes the sovereignty of the peoples or life, or knows the concept of dignity. Cuba will continue defending the peace and the sovereignty of the peoples, will continue in the middle of the situation, begging for life, solidarity, love, truth, and always for unity. That is a lesson that we learned, Cubans, unity, and that is why for that freedom and for that unity we will have to give everything. In the 100 years of our Fidel that lived and fought for all the humble people in the world, that opened the path for our people to have dignity, let's reaffirm, convince that imperialism cannot be given anything, and that in Cuba no one is giving up. Down imperialism of the Yankees. Long live the people of Venezuela. Homeland or death, we will prevail.
Y en él van amarrados la muerte y el amor. Una columna oscura se levanta y los niños se arrancan los juegos de un tirón. Abuela, tus tijeras son rurales, cortan otros males, pero este viento no. Guárdate tu oración, amigo viejo, invoca peralejo, que nos viene mejor. esta mujer sagrada inclina el ceño. Nadie se va a morir, la vida toda es un breve segundo de su sueño. Nadie se va a morir, la vida toda es nuestro talismán, es nuestro manto. Nadie se va a morir, menos ahora que el canto de la patria es nuestro canto. Delante de la columna al frente, donde ha viajado siempre la mira del fusil, que hable la fértil puntería, que esta garganta envía mi forma de vivir. Con muerte todas las cosas ciertas grabaron una puerta en el centro de abril. Con patria se ha dibujado el nombre del alma de los hombres que no van a morir. Nadie se va a morir, menos ahora que esta mujer sagrada inclina el ceño. Nadie se va a morir, la vida toda es un breve segundo de su sueño. Nadie se va a morir, la vida toda, y es nuestro talismán, es nuestro manto. Nadie se va a morir, menos ahora que el canto de la patria es nuestro canto. ¡Viva Cuba! ¡Viva Venezuela!
We listen to the words of the hero of work and recognize Cuban scientist Belinda Sanchez Ramirez, and also the interpretations of these English autores who gave us the return of the friend and Silvio Alejandro with the subject Preludio of Silvio Rodriguez. Next, in representation of the thousands of Cuban professionals that have worked in the sister Republic of Venezuela, we will give the right to speak to the Dr. Ainelis Cruz Rodriguez. Then, once again, Silvio Alejandro Raulito and Fidel Díaz-Caso will continue giving us the unforgettable songs in this, and then we will listen to the student of the Superior Institute of International Relationships, Raúl Roa Gracias, and Secretary of the Communist Union, Adriana Amores Moreno. Dear companion Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, First Secretary of the Party and President of the Republic of Cuba, companions, and I increase my voice, which is the voice of the medical cooperation of Cuba, of the solidarity and of brotherhood. We are reunited here with indignation and pain to denounce before the world that in the early hours of January the 3rd of 2026, the sovereignty of the people of Venezuela has been violated by the government of the United States of America in an act of barbarism and despite full international law, launching a cruel military attack against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. U.S. planes bombed civilian installations and military installations in Caracas and at least another 3 states, Miranda, Aragua, and La Guaira, including the military base of Fuerte Tiuna and the airport of La Carlota. The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife were kidnapped, not recognizing or not knowing their current situation. Civilian victims are reported consequences of missiles in urban areas, and it's the end of a policy of maximum pressure and blockade destined to subordinate the will of a nation, a sovereign nation, to the imperial interest under the false pretext of the fight against drug trafficking. Cuba denounces and demands the urgent reaction of the international community against the criminal attack of the United States to Venezuela. The international mechanisms must take party in the matter. A state cannot take the right of being the judge of the world. Where is the Organization of United Nations? Where are those who define themselves as defenders of peace? In the acts of barbarism, they cannot stay impune against the sovereignty and the integrity of the territory of Venezuela. It is a grave assault to Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. The state terrorism against the brave people of Venezuela and against our America. We are in solidarity with the people of Venezuela that throughout the history has proven a will that cannot be broken to defend its independence, a heroic people that is noble, warrior that also has a deep human character in its Bolivarian revolution. And I also give faith of it because I had the honor of being a collaborator for the Cuban medical mission for 10 years in the land of Chavez and Bolivar. The Venezuelan people do not deserve such an act of barbarism. We do a calling to the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean and the world to mobilize themselves, to all of the workers and to the artists, to the youth, to the social movements. The solidarity that is active is our best weapon against war. Latin America standing no to interference and stop to the military attack against Venezuela, out imperialism from Latin America, no to state terrorism, no to fascism. We demand the liberation of the constitutional president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, kidnapped criminally the early hours of today. The U.S. does not have political authority, no legal or moral authority for such an action today. More than ever, we must remember the words of those who forged our America when they said, "The soil of the foreigner has profaned the sacred soil of the homeland. We will not allow it against the homeland of Bolivar, Chavez, and Maduro. We will not understand. Long live the sovereignty of the peoples and long live the internationalism. Homeland or death, we will win."
Sí, Belinda en su intervención, la palabra que más mencionó fue vida por la vida. Y esto es un tema
Word,
de Noel Nicola,
life, for life, and this is a song from Noel Nicola on the year 69.
Lo absurdo y sin razón sería no saber qué hacer con nuestras alegrías y apretarlas en la mano y seguir encerrados con ellas por la vida, por la vida. Lo torpe y criminal sería dar la espalda a los que luchan cada día, no tenderles nuestra mano y seguir encerrados con ellas por la vida, por la vida. Yo solo te diré sobre las cosas de esta hora, cómo es que siente aquí la inmensa mayoría. Si somos igual que tú y tú no puedes ser feliz, de que nos valen todas nuestras alegrías. Alegrías, alegrías. Lo absurdo y criminal sería no ayudarte con más fuerzas cada día, no ponerse de tu lado ni luchar aquí contigo por
la vida, por la vida, por la vida, por la vida.
Vamos a cantar esta canción que le hicimos nuestro pueblo revolucionario a nuestro comandante. Ayúdenme fuerte ahí, que estoy bastante afectado y tengo más ganas de otra cosa que no sea precisamente estar cantando aquí. Estos días se les ha visto cabalgar a Camilo y a Martín, y delante de la caravana, lentamente sin jinete, un caballo para ti. Vuelven las heridas que nos sanan de los hombres y mujeres que no te dejaremos ir. Hoy el corazón nos late afuera y tu pueblo, aunque le duela, no te quiere despedir. Hombre, los agradecidos te acompañan, como anhelaremos tus hazañas. Ni la muerte cree que se apoderó de ti.
the Communist Party of Cuba and President of the Republic of Cuba, excellent Ambassador Orlando Monero, representatives of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in Cuba, to the Venezuelan people, men and women, today we're here in circumstances that mark a point of inflection in the history of Latin America. What has happened against Venezuela is not an isolated incident, is the most brutal manifestation of an imperial strategy that has been executing for decades with criminal methodology. They have criminally kidnapped in the early hours of the day President Nicolas Maduro and the companion Celia Flores. They have kidnapped a chief of state democratically elected by their people and in the middle of the exercises of its functions, violating all international law. It's not a rhetoric, it's a hit, in fact, of a great gravity. This terrorism of state executed by those who call themselves the defender of human rights and democracy. The sequence is known because we have lived it once and over. First, the economical sanctions designed to asphyxiate, and then the media war to delegitimize, the financial blockade to strangle, and finally, when the people refuse to give up, the direct aggression. It has all been built on the base of lies and manipulation. It is the imperial and fascist manual executing itself with an precision. They stole from the Venezuelan people millions of resources. They invented presidents as if the popular sovereignty was a puppet game, and when nothing broke the resistance, when none of their operations managed to destroy the Bolivarian revolution, they did this step that was always in their agenda: the invasion, the flagrant violation of the national sovereignty. And what is the true reason? The annihilation of the ideas, the destruction of the principles, and the Latin American Union that they are so scared of, because they know that the people, when they're united, are unbreakable. The formula is repeated exactly in each territory that defies the neoliberal order, and here they gave the warning that we must all understand. If today is Venezuela, tomorrow it can be any of us. We are the same humanity, we share the same historical territory, and we face the same adversary. There's no Latin American people that are safe while imperialism maintains their capacity of doing with impunity. Venezuela is not alone because its cause is our cause. The sovereignty of Venezuela is linked to ours. We learned that from Martí. Homeland is humanity. That's why to the Venezuelan people we say, your dignity is our dignity, your resistance inspires our fight. To President Maduro we say, the history and the peoples that are aware are on your side. To the empire and its operators, they will never kidnap the will of the peoples that learn to fight for the liberation. They will not accomplish the destruction of the Bolivarian revolution, because they lives in each Venezuela that is conscious in its resistance act. We demand the immediate liberation of President Nicolas Maduro and the cease of this invasion and all ways of aggression against Venezuela and the peoples of Latin America. We demand the respect and sovereignty to our peoples, and we warn: each imperial crime strengthens our conviction, each aggression multiplies our resistance. Long live the Bolivarian Revolution, long live Cuba. Down with the Yankee imperialism, socialism or death, homeland or death, we will win.
In the second summit of the CELAC developed in Havana 2014, the chiefs of state and government of the Community of Latin American States and Caribbean States proclaimed Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. It was done in the name of their peoples and interpreting faithfully their aspirations. Today, the decayed and fascist government of the U.S. has attempted against this legitimate right of our people, the sacred right to peace. Our commitment continues being permanent with this peaceful solution of controversies, with the goal of forever
eliminating the use of force and the threat of use of force in our region. Next, the words of the intellectual and president of Casa Las Americas, Abel Prieto Jimenez, and then the singers Emiliano Sardillas, Aramis Padilla, Hector Gutierrez, and Luis Paz, accompanied by the guitar player Omar Perez, and then the hero of the Republic of Cuba and national coordinator of the CDRs, Gerardo Hernandez Nordello, and it ends this segment by the singer Ani Garces with the song Venezuela, Long Live Venezuela. Dear companion Díaz-Canel and the companions of the presidency, and Maneiro, ambassador of Venezuela in Cuba, great friend and great companion, this decayed empire of people that knows itself condemned to be dissolved and does not accept the multipolar world that is being imposed, that allows itself to violate all international legality and all the civilized norms of co-living, directly assaulted in the early hours today the sister nation of Venezuela and kidnapped its legitimate president. This empire allows itself to violate all of the limits they pretend the world to believe their lies. The lies have been a permanent weapon against Venezuela, against Cuba, and against the peoples. In this case, against Venezuela, they have done true monstrosities in the so-called kingdom of the after-truth, which means the lies. They pretend the world to believe their lies and accept the barbarism as something that is inevitable. Today, from Cuba, the early hours of today, our First Secretary and President Díaz-Canel made an urgent calling to international community to stop this very grave military aggression. There can be a worthy person in this world that doesn't denounce through all of the ways that they have this infamous act. We have to touch and we have to knock on all of the doors for truth to circulate on this sinister plan to take the wealth of Venezuela. We have to stop the forces of hate, the forces of war, of fascism, defend the right to peace, to sovereignty, and to life, to justice. This is what today is being faced in Venezuela, the forces of hate, of war, of death, and the forces of sovereignty, of dignity, and of life and justice. Fidel said, speaking of Vietnam, a phrase that I have repeated and it is known by Ambassador Maneiro regarding Venezuela. For Vietnam, we're willing to give even our own blood. Today, Fidel would say that for Venezuela, we're willing to give even our own blood. The Cuban people learned to love Bolivar through Martí. The Cuban children listened in the words of Martí to speak of Bolivar through La Edad de Oro, that magazine that was turned in an essential book in the formation of many generations of Cubans, and then through Fidel of its brotherhood with Chavez, Raúl Díaz-Canel, and even the President Nicolás Maduro. This barbaric act is produced, but it is starting the year 2026, the year of the 100 years of Fidel. Let's evoke in this dark times the word and the example of Fidel. Cuba and Venezuela, one single flag. That slogan was repeated many times by the Cuban delegation that participated a few days ago in the Assembly of the Peoples for the Peace and the Sovereignty in Caracas. I had the honor of participating in that event, in that delegation, and effectively Cuba and Venezuela are one single flag. We are one single flag, and today we demand from this Anti-Imperialist Tribune that accumulates so much history, that is vibrant, so much history of resistance and of victory of our people, to Today we demand for them to liberate President Maduro and to retreat the imperialist military forces of the Caribbean. Peace must return to the sister Venezuelan. Peace must return to the Caribbean. Long live the Bolivarian Revolution and the Cuban Revolution.
Ensangrentada mano. El imperio prepotente con su ensangrentada mano agrede a otro pueblo hermano y secuestra al presidente. Cuba responde presente para decir aquí erguida. Esta herida es nuestra herida y duélale a quien le duela. Estamos con Venezuela y en ella nos va la vida. Se concretó la agresión, muestra el lado más hostil, la cúpula gangsteril de Marco Rubio y de Tron. Esta es la revelación que algunos ojos no ven. Tron es gánster 100%. En un año de mandato tiene robo, asesinato y ahora secuestro también. Este golpe a Nicolás, odio del norte al acecho, es otro golpe al derecho de los pueblos y a la paz. La ignominia contumaz monta de un plomo en el anca, porque donde el daño arranca la luz abriendo una herida, Latinoamérica unida le duele a la Casa Blanca. Le han clavado una agresión a Venezuela en el pecho, pero lo único que han hecho es despertar a Simón. Ya verán la reacción del mundo contra un orate, después de este disparate que el imperio ha cometido. No viene un pueblo rendido, viene un siglo de combate. Ante esta vil agresión, Cuba entera sale al ruedo. Ante esta vil agresión, Cuba entera sale al ruedo, pero no tiembla de miedo, grita con indignación. Yo estoy bien de la presión, pero si hoy llego a fallar, no me salgan a buscar cactopril ni en alapril, a mí búsquenme un fusil para salir a pelear. Nosotros que resistimos al imperio americano, con el pueblo más que hermano de Bolívar nos unimos. Como pueblo le exigimos al imperio que asesina y nuestra paz contamina, que devuelvan a Maduro, que el pan se le ha puesto duro en América Latina.
pacíficos armados con fusiles de moral. Que la ignominia imperial frene sus burdos errores de propagar agresores. Que esta hermandad se profese y que Maduro regrese victorioso a Miraflores. ¡Guerra! ¡Guerra! Quien quiere la guerra, el único que la quiere es Donald Trump, que se muere por ser amo de la tierra. Pero eso aquí a nadie aterra, aunque han dicho que vendrán, porque aquí nunca entrarán Donald Trump ni Marco Rubio, aunque haya en Cuba un diluvio de misiles de la OTAN. Ante la agresión artera que acaba de producirse, América sale a unirse bajo una sola bandera. Si la guerra se extendiera, hay que hacerla sin cuartel. Jugarnos todos la piel y luchar allá y aquí por Bolívar, por Martí, por Chávez y por Fidel.
Cuban men and women, today the president of our national hero was the more president ever when he said that the empire wanted to extend its claws through the peoples of our Latin America in these moments that we are reunited in this solidarity act, condemning the barbarism. There's Venezuelans in some places of the world that are being joyful through what happened, and we have to recognize that there's also Cuban people against the homeland in certain parts of the world that are threatening with that Venezuela first and then Cuba. May they not be mistaken. The homeland is not to be played with the revolution is not to be played with the dignity of the Cubans is not to be played with, or our independence that has taken so much blood and sacrifice. The humanity has to raise their voices and tell imperialism that we are in the 21st century and that the world is not governed as a Wild West people through gunshots. There's a lot of dignity and patriotism accumulated in our peoples to allow them to come and run over us. It is the time for the people that love peace in the world beyond any ideology to raise their voices. For those who respect international law, to raise their voices, international organizations. This cannot be a world where chaos reigns. We call to all the decent people of the world to condemn this arbitrary act that has been committed against the brother people of Venezuela, and may no one have doubts. The bombs that were sent to different cities in Venezuela did not ask who was the Chavistas and who weren't way there. The reports have said that it has cost the lives of innocent people, men, women, and probably children. It is what can happen to any people that does not take care. It is what can happen to any people that shakes it. What can happen to any people that doesn't maintain their unity. That is a price that has to be paid. That is why we ratify today the solidarity with our brothers of Venezuela. we condemn barbarism, but also we ratify Cubans the support of our revolution to the ideas of Fidel, of Martí, and of Díaz-Canel. And we reaffirm that those who want to take these people, they will have to come prepared to face the resolution of the Cubans, to the dignity of Cubans, and to our will of defending our homeland till the last drop of blood. Long live the Bolivarian Revolution, long live the Cuban Revolution, and long live our peoples of America. Down with imperialism. Homeland or death, we will win.
Con tu paisaje y mis sueños me iré por esos mundos de Dios, y tus recuerdos al atardecer me harán más corto el camino. Entre tus playas quedó mi niñez, tendida al viento y al sol, y esa nostalgia que sube sin querer se hizo canción. De los montes quiero la inmensidad, y del río la acuarela, y de ti los hijos que sembrarán nuevas escuelas. Y si un día tengo que naufragar y el tifón enterrar mi cuerpo cerca del mar, en Venezuela, en Venezuela.
En este momento
This moment of firmness, unity, and ratification of principles, we will listen to the words of our first Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba and President of the Republic, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez. Down imperialism. Down imperialism that is genocidal, immoral, and fascist.
Hermanos de Venezuela y
brothers of Venezuela and of all our American citizens of the world, Brother Maneiro, Ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in Cuba, compatriots, our Commander-in-Chief, Fidel Castro Ruz, analyzing the dangerous behavior of imperialism in its devastating movements forwards of the Middle East, said over 20 years ago, and I quote his words, "Never all of the nations of the world were under the power and the whims of those who lead a superpower with a power which seems to have no limits, out of which philosophy and political ideas and notions of ethic no one has the minimum idea. Its decisions are practically unpredictable, and the force and the capacity of destroying and killing seem to be present in each one of their pronunciations. It seemed like those words were said to qualify today the brutal attack of military force of the US against Venezuela and the unacceptable, vulgar and barbaric kidnap of our brother, the President Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores. Cuba condemns and denounces those actions as an act of terrorism of state and criminal assault against our America's peace zone, a violation of the sovereignty of a nation that is a symbol of independence, dignity, and solidarity, and an unacceptable attack to international law. No, imperialists, this is not your backyard nor a territory in dispute. We do not accept or recognize the Monroe Doctrine, nor kings nor emperors. The land of Bolivar is sacred, and an attack to its children is an attack to all of the worthy children of our Americas. And as it was referenced by Abel, for Venezuela and for, of course, for Cuba, we're willing to give even our own blood, even our own life, it can only be called coward, criminal, and the attack in the early hours to a peaceful people and noble. And it is an act of terrorism of state that was treacherous in the way it was exercised in an arbitrary way and abusing of the military supremacy for the mandate of a foreign boss and an expression of fascism, or better said, of neo-fascism that is pretended to impose and install in all of the humanity in these times. That is why the threat is not only for Venezuela, the threat is against humanity, and it is sustained in the doctrine that is fallacious of peace through force. This act of terrorism of state that just happened in Venezuela is a scandalous walkover on international law, the military aggression to a nation of peace that does not threaten the US, and the kidnap of a legitimate and elected president, with sovereignty by their people, that indignates, and that is why we are here. Those who are indignated, there can be silence or acceptation of that act of terrorism of state only comparable to the crimes against humanity that are committed by Israel in the Gaza Strip. These early hours we have been the witness of a chilling confirmation. The most fervent follower to the Nobel Peace Prize is in reality the biggest threat to the peace in the continent. Its attack on Venezuela breaks with the stability that has characterized for years our region of Latin America and the Caribbean. Those who celebrate the terrorist and fascist act, as Gerardo explained, that the US has just committed on a sovereign nation of the continent, can only do so from hate that is in their judgment. No one that is informed at the minimum can ignore the grave implications of such criminal acts for the regional peace and of the world. That is why it's urgent for the international community to mobilize, articulate itself, and coordinate the denunciation of this flagrant act of state terrorism and the illegal, immoral, and criminal kidnap of a legitimate president to cause a regime change of its someone outside of the Venezuelan people had that right. The objective is not our brother Maduro, it's not the Venezuelan military, it is not even the lying narrative of drug trafficking that they sustained with cynicism for weeks and months. The bandits of the worst species as Marcos Rubio. The very dark objective of the imperialism desire is Venezuelan petroleum, it's the earth and the natural resources of Venezuela. Only the cynical and the cowards can close their eyes and ears to the declarations of Trump and his sidekicks that barely a few days ago recognized without being ashamed that what they look for are the wealth of Venezuela, riches that have been promised to them without no limits, the candidate to the empire, and there's already the news that she's going to be supported to be the president of Venezuela. The objective is also to turn off that place of resistance to imperialism and defense of regional integration, that is the Bolivarian Revolution, from the arrival of Commander Chavez to the presidency of the heroic nation. The revolution of the Bolivarian Revolution has proven to be a process of the masses, of deep popular roots that we have no doubt will go out to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, and their president, as they did in April of 2002, facing the coup instigated also by the US empire, the one that has never abandoned the attempt to take over their land. The United States don't have moral authority nor legal authority of any kind to take out of the country through force the Venezuelan president. But the United States is the responsible face in the world of the physical integrity of Maduro. We are joining the call of the Venezuelan authorities that demand a proof of life of Maduro and Celia. They have been creating the false accusation of drug traffickers against the Venezuelan government for months, and they have been incapable of presenting one single evidence. They have not done it because such evidence does not exist, because such practices doesn't exist, because it all responds to a narrative line that looks to justify this indignant act of state terrorism that they just committed. From their own federal agencies, analysts and investigators of the US have been offering opinions and information that estimate the false story of drug terrorism, that show that those accusations against Venezuela and the president are lies. It is very indignant that Trump, Rubio, and their sidekicks do not care about the truth, those who should be condemned by a criminal court that is anti-fascist and international should be them. The fascists that are today in the power positions of the US learned very well from their Nazi references the principle that a lie that is repeated 1,000 times can be turned in a truth. But the truth will impose and the peoples will defend it as in the past. They defeated the fascism. Nor the Venezuelan people, nor the US people, nor the international community believe in the group of lies that they have been building. They're not times for middle inks, they're times of definitions and of taking a position facing the fascism and the imperial barbarism. To close the lines, people of America, let's not
Let the giant of the 7 lands pass. Let's not
forget what she warned decades ago. In imperialism, we cannot trust not even
a little bit like this.
Nicolas and Celia are of Venezuela, and they must be returned to the Venezuelan people that elected and claims for the legitimate president. Down imperialism. Down imperialism. Down imperialism. The united people will never be defeated. Cuba and Venezuela, united we will win. Homeland or death, socialism or death, we will win.
Statements of President Díaz-Canel from Cuba was addressing this important gathering here at the Malecon in the Anti-Imperialist Tribune here in front of the U.S. Embassy, denouncing the outrageous, the illegal criminal attack of the United States against the Venezuelan people and the kidnapping of President Nicolás Maduro and first combatant Celia Flores, whose whereabouts are currently unknown. And the people of Venezuela, the people of Cuba, the people of the world, and many heads of states and government are demanding an immediate proof of life of both the President Nicolás Maduro and first combatant Celia Flores. With the activity, the event that we just witnessed here live on our screen is the act of solidarity with Venezuela, and that condemns the military aggression of the U.S. against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. We saw different people take to the stage and denounce the illegal actions, the illegal strategies of the U.S. empire to control and take over the resources and wealth